Imagine for a moment that the vast universe within your mind is like an endless ocean, limitless, mysterious, and filled with possibilities. Yet, many of us stand on the shore, staring out at the horizon, wondering how to cross the immense expanse. The secret is not in giant leaps or overwhelming starts, but in the way we think, the small steps we take, and the mindset we adopt. To truly succeed, we must learn to think big, not just in size, but in the vastness of our vision. And yet we must start small, like a single drop of water that begins the flow of a mighty river. But beyond just thinking and starting, there's a deeper truth acting as if you already embody the wealth and wisdom you seek. This is not about money alone, but about the confidence, patience, and openness that the truly rich possess. In this dance between the vast and the minute, between dreaming and doing, lies the secret of success. Today, let's explore how to think big, start small, and act like the rich, and in doing so, awaken the creator within you. When we speak of greatness, what often comes to mind is something vast, something overwhelming in size. We imagine mountains that pierce the sky, skyscrapers that blot out the sun, or crowds that fill entire cities. Our minds are naturally drawn to magnitude, to the grand spectacle. And so, when we think of success, we imagine it as a towering achievement, something monumental and loud. But this way of thinking is an illusion, a trick of the mind that confuses size with significance. Imagine a tiny seed, barely visible to the naked eye, lying dormant beneath the earth. In itself, it seems insignificant, almost nothing. But within this smallness lies the potential for an entire forest. The seed does not need to shout or prove itself. It quietly contains the blueprint of greatness. Yet we rarely stop to consider that this small, unassuming thing holds more power than the tallest tree. The tree may be impressive, but it is the seed that is truly remarkable, because it is the origin, the possibility, the beginning. This is the paradox of size. We tend to equate size with power, volume with importance, and visibility with value. But in truth, greatness is not about the size of the footprint we make at first, but the expansiveness of the vision we hold in our minds. The universe itself began not with a sprawling explosion, but with a singular point, infinitesimally small, infinitely dense. From that tiny point came everything: galaxies, stars, planets, life itself. The whole cosmos unfolded from a seed of potential. So when you set out on your journey, do not be discouraged if your beginnings seem small, if your efforts seem modest. It is the breadth of your imagination and the depth of your belief that matter more than the scale of your first step. A great journey begins with a vision that stretches beyond the horizon of the ordinary, a vision so vast it almost feels intangible, and it is this vision that propels the smallest actions into grand realities. But why do we confuse size with significance? It's because we live in a world that measures value by quantity. We count numbers, followers, dollars, titles, degrees. We admire those who occupy the biggest stages and have the loudest voices. Yet this world is only one way of seeing things, a surface perspective that misses the deeper essence. If greatness depended on size alone, the stars would be meaningless because they are so far away and so small in appearance. Yet their light travels billions of years to reach us, touching our lives in profound ways. Consider the human mind. Inside the small cavity of your skull exists an entire universe of thoughts, emotions, dreams, and creativity. No one would say the mind is insignificant because of its physical size. Its value lies in its capacity to imagine, to innovate, to transform. And this is the nature of true greatness. It is not about the physical dimensions of your work, but the scope of your inner world, the power of your vision. This also means that thinking big is not about making giant plans right away, but about expanding your awareness beyond the limitations imposed by your circumstances or your past. To think big is to realize that your potential is not bound by your current situation. It's a shift in perception, a breaking free from the narrow cage of smallness that we often imprison ourselves in. It's about opening the doors of your mind to the endless possibilities that life offers, even if you must begin with something tiny. Alan Watts often spoke of the dance between the finite and the infinite, the microcosm and the macrocosm. He reminded us that the small and the large are not separate, but reflections of each other. The same patterns repeat in the atom and the galaxy. The same rhythms pulse in the heartbeat and the ocean tides. When you understand this, you begin to see that your small beginnings are intrinsically connected to the vast universe, and your personal vision can ripple outward in ways you never imagined. To think big is also to embrace mystery. The vastness of your vision includes the unknown, the things you cannot yet see or understand. This is both frightening and exhilarating. It means stepping into a space where certainty dissolves, where outcomes are not guaranteed. Yet it is only here in this openness that true creativity and innovation occur. The rich and successful do not fear this uncertainty. They welcome it as the playground of growth. So, if you find yourself overwhelmed by the immensity of your goals or the distance between where you are and where you want to be, remember this size is not the measure of your potential. The universe is made up of countless small things, each holding its own unique power. You are no different. Your ideas, your actions, your dreams, no matter how small they seem, contain within them the seed of something magnificent. The key is to nurture your vision with patience and faith. Like the tiny seed under the soil, your dream may lie hidden for a time, unseen and silent. But within it, the blueprint of greatness is alive and waiting. Trust in the process, in the unfolding of time, and in your own ability to grow. Greatness is not a thunderous arrival, but a quiet becoming. In this sense, thinking big is not a destination, it's a way of being. It's a lens through which you view the world, a perspective that sees opportunity where others see obstacles, that finds meaning in small steps, that holds an unshakable belief in the potential for transformation. When you adopt this mindset, you begin to act differently. You no longer measure yourself by the size of your current achievements, but by the vastness of your dreams. And so, the illusion of size is shattered. You come to see that it is not the grandness of your start that defines you, but the expansiveness of your vision and the integrity of your actions. Success is not reserved for those who begin with great fanfare, but for those who dare to dream big, to start small, and to keep moving forward with courage and grace. In the end, it is the quality of your inner world, the richness of your imagination and the strength of your belief, that shapes the reality you create. And this, more than anything else, is the true measure of greatness. There is a subtle magic hidden in the smallest beginnings, a quiet power that often goes unnoticed because we are conditioned to look for grandeur and spectacle. Yet, the truth is that every vast ocean was once nothing more than a single drop of water. Every towering oak started as a tiny acorn buried in the earth. The journey from seed to tree is slow, subtle, and almost imperceptible at first, but it is this humble beginning that contains the essence of greatness. In our culture, we are taught to seek instant success, immediate results, and rapid progress. We want the flash, the boom, the sudden leap that propels us forward. But life rarely works this way. Real growth is a process often invisible to the naked eye. It unfolds not in dramatic bursts, but in steady, deliberate steps. To start small is to honor this natural rhythm, to trust the unfolding without rushing or forcing. Imagine a great symphony. It does not begin with a full orchestra playing all at once. Instead, it starts with a single note or a soft motif, a simple melody that gradually weaves itself into a complex and beautiful tapestry. The smallest sound holds within it the potential for the entire composition. So too with your journey, your first steps, no matter how modest, carry within them the seeds of a grand future. The power of small beginnings lies in their ability to build momentum. Like rolling a snowball down a hill, it starts as a tiny sphere but gathers size and strength as it moves forward. Each small action you take is a building block, a foundational stone on which your future is constructed. What feels insignificant today may become monumental tomorrow. This is why it is so important to begin, no matter how small or imperfect your start may seem. Alan Watts often reminded us that life is not a problem to be solved, but a mystery to be lived. In this mystery, beginnings are not failures or weaknesses, but essential parts of the dance. When you begin small, you are not admitting defeat, you are aligning yourself with the natural flow of growth. You accept that greatness is a process, not an event. You learn patience, resilience, and humility. Starting small also allows for flexibility and learning. When you take modest steps, you can adjust your course more easily. You are not locked into grand plans that may become burdensome or unrealistic. Instead, you remain open to new insights, opportunities, and changes. The small beginning is like a soft landing, a gentle opening into the vast possibilities ahead. There is also freedom in starting small. When you are not burdened by the pressure to achieve monumental success immediately, you can experiment, explore, and play. You can fail without fear, knowing that each misstep is a valuable lesson rather than a catastrophe. This freedom fosters creativity and innovation, essential ingredients for any meaningful achievement. Moreover, small beginnings help cultivate gratitude and mindfulness. When you focus on the little things, the first steps, the initial efforts, you become more present and appreciative of the journey itself rather than just the destination. This presence enriches your experience and grounds you in reality. It reminds you that success is not just about outcomes, but about the way you live and grow along the way. Consider the story of a painter who begins with a blank canvas. The first brushstroke may seem insignificant, even messy or uncertain, yet it is the essential beginning. Without it, no masterpiece can emerge. The painter trusts the process, knowing that each stroke adds depth and meaning. Over time, what started as a few tentative lines transforms into a vibrant work of art. Your life is the same. Each small action contributes to a larger, beautiful whole. In the modern world, where speed and scale are often celebrated, the power of small beginnings is a radical concept. It calls us back to a deeper understanding of time and growth. It asks us to slow down, to honor the process, and to trust that even the smallest steps matter. This trust is an act of faith, faith in yourself, faith in the journey, and faith in the unfolding mystery of life. Small beginnings also teach us about the interconnectedness of all things. Just as a single drop of water is part of the ocean, your small efforts are connected to larger movements and influences. When you start small, you tap into a network of support, inspiration, and energy that extends far beyond your immediate actions. You become part of a larger flow, a grander dance in which every movement matters. It's important to remember that small does not mean insignificant. The smallest things often have the greatest impact because they set the foundation for everything else. A single act of kindness can change the course of a person's day or even their life. A small idea can spark a revolution. A modest investment of time or energy can lead to profound transformation. This principle applies not only to external achievements but also to inner growth. Personal transformation rarely happens overnight. It begins with small shifts in awareness, tiny changes in habit, subtle adjustments in perspective. These small internal beginnings accumulate over time, creating profound changes in how you see yourself and the world. The challenge is to embrace these small beginnings with patience and reverence. To see them not as obstacles or setbacks, but as the necessary first steps on the path to greatness. To resist the temptation to compare your small start to someone else's seemingly giant leap. Your journey is uniquely yours, and it unfolds in its own time and way. Alan Watts' wisdom invites us to see life as a dance, where every step, no matter how small, is essential to the rhythm. To start small is to join this dance with humility and courage. It is to recognize that the power to create, to grow, and to succeed lies not in immediate grand gestures, but in the persistent, loving attention we give to each moment. So, if you find yourself hesitant to begin because your start feels too small, remember this: the mightiest river begins as a gentle stream. The tallest tree begins as a tiny seed. The vast universe began in a single instant of creation. Your journey is no different. In the smallest step, the greatest potential resides. Trust it, nurture it, and move forward with confidence. In doing so, you honor the profound truth that all great things begin in small ways, quietly, humbly, and with infinite possibility. To think big is not merely to aim for wealth, power, or status. It is to enter into a sacred relationship with possibility. It is the art of opening your mind beyond the confines of what is, into the mystery of what could be. Thinking big is not about ambition in the shallow sense. It is a creative force, an act of spiritual imagination. It is the recognition that your mind, your consciousness, is not bound by the limits of your circumstances. Rather, it is the architect of those very circumstances. The universe itself is a story of big thinking. Out of the silence and the void came stars, galaxies, and life, all because something somehow imagined more than emptiness. And you, a speck in the cosmos, carry within you that same imaginative power. You are not here merely to react to life. You are here to create it. But creation begins in the mind. Every building was once a thought, every symphony a passing idea, every revolution a whisper in someone's heart. Yet so many people resist the act of thinking big because they fear disappointment. They have been trained to shrink their vision to fit what others call realistic. But what is realism except the residue of what has already been done? It is history masquerading as limitation. The creative force of thinking big dares to go beyond what has already been built and says, yes, but what if? That question, what if, is the birth of every dream, every advancement, every miracle. You may have been taught to stay within your lane, to be humble in your aspirations. But this kind of humility is often a disguise for fear. True humility is not thinking less of yourself. It is recognizing that the power flowing through you is larger than you, and it's your task to serve it. To think big, then, is not arrogance. It is devotion. It is to say, I am willing to be a channel for something greater than my fears, my doubts, or my past. Alan Watts often explored the nature of the self, how we are not isolated egos trapped in skin, but expressions of the entire cosmos playing its infinite game of hide and seek. If you truly understood that, if you could feel yourself as not just a person, but a wave on the ocean of being, then you would see that your visions are not yours alone. They are the universe dreaming through you. So when you think big, you are not forcing something unnatural. You are simply allowing the current of life to flow through you without resistance. To think big is to trust that you are not alone in your efforts. That what you imagine with sincerity, the universe begins to arrange with precision. This is not mystical fluff. It is how intention works. What you consistently imagine, you begin to move toward, and what you move toward begins to move toward you. The creative force of big thinking reshapes the way you speak, act, and respond. It changes the people you attract, the choices you make, and the energy you emit. Slowly, subtly, your outer world begins to bend toward the shape of your inner world. But thinking big also requires responsibility. For when you allow your imagination to roam freely, it becomes tempting to chase illusions, to mistake fantasy for vision. The difference is this: fantasy is an escape, vision is a commitment. When you think big with purpose, you are not trying to avoid reality. You are engaging with it more deeply. You are saying, I see the world not just as it is, but as it could be, and I am willing to participate in that becoming. It is important, then, to ground your big thinking in action, in presence, in service. The creative force of vision must be tethered to the earth, just as a tree's highest branches are supported by its deepest roots. Dream big, yes, but act with integrity, speak with clarity, and live with compassion. The dream that is rooted in love will always outlast the one rooted in ego. There will be times when your big thoughts will seem too big, when people will laugh or dismiss you. That's only because they have forgotten how to dream. Do not take it personally. They are not rejecting you, they are rejecting the part of themselves that once dared to believe. Let your vision be a reminder to them, not through argument but through example. Let your life become the evidence of what thinking big can create. When you embrace the creative force of big thinking, you begin to live not from memory but from imagination. You are no longer recycling the past, but sculpting the future. And this future is not a place you arrive at. It is a reality you build, moment by moment, thought by thought, step by step. The beauty of this kind of thinking is that it is contagious. Just as one candle can light 1,000 others without losing its flame, one bold thought can ignite a revolution of minds. Your courage to imagine more becomes permission for others to do the same. In this way, Thinking big is not just a personal practice. It is a communal offering. It lifts the collective spirit by raising the standard of what is possible. So let yourself think big. Not because you must prove anything, but because life is too vast, too mysterious, and too magnificent to live small. Let your dreams stretch like the sky. Let your thoughts dance with the stars. Do not shrink to fit the expectations of the world. Expand until your vision becomes the shape of the world itself. After all, it is not the bigness of your dream that matters, but your willingness to believe in it fully, to nurture it quietly, and to bring it forth with devotion. That is the true creative force. That is what turns invisible ideas into visible miracles. It is a curious thing, isn't it? How some people seem to attract wealth and opportunity without strain, while others toil endlessly and remain in lack. But if we look closely, if we peel away the material layers of success, we begin to see something much deeper than external circumstances at play. We begin to see that wealth, true, sustainable wealth, is not first and foremost a matter of possessions or privilege. It is a matter of perception, a way of being, a mental operating system that governs how one interprets, interacts with, and navigates life. Now, when I speak of the rich mindset, I am not referring merely to the mindset of acquiring currency or collecting luxury. That would be a shallow interpretation. The rich mindset is something far more profound. It is a relationship with reality, a way of viewing the world not as a place of limitation, but as an endless landscape of opportunity. It is the understanding that value is not found, it is created. It is not taken, it is generated from within. Most people operate from a scarcity mindset without even realizing it. They have inherited a system of thought that constantly whispers, "There's not enough. You must compete. You must hoard. You must protect what little you have." And so they move through life anxiously, clinging to what is safe and familiar. They fear failure, they avoid risk, they seek security. But in doing so, they imprison themselves in the very limitations they wish to escape. It is not their reality that keeps them small. It is their operating system. And like an outdated program, it cannot run new software. It cannot hold a vision of abundance when it is coded in fear. The rich mindset, by contrast, is not concerned with lack because it knows that resources are generated through perspective, creativity, and value creation. Those who embody this mindset understand that money is simply energy, a reflection of the usefulness you offer to others, the problems you solve, and the boldness with which you bring your vision into form. The rich do not wait for permission to act. They move first, they think independently, they cultivate a strong sense of internal authority. They have trained themselves to ask different questions. Not, "Can I afford this?" but, "How can I create the means to afford this?" Not, "Will this work?" but, "What must I become for this to work?" This shift in internal dialogue is subtle, yet powerful. It is the difference between living as a passive recipient of life and becoming an active creator. Alan Watts often reminded us that we are not just victims of fate, but participants in the dance of existence. The music of life plays through us. We are not separate from the system, we are the system. And so, to adopt a rich mindset is to change the tune you're dancing to see the same world, but through a lens of expansion rather than contraction. The rich mindset also thrives on long-term vision. It resists the lure of instant gratification. While others chase quick wins, the wealthy thinker builds systems. They plant seeds with the understanding that trees take time to grow. They seek time not as something to spend, but something to invest. They are not distracted by the glitter of the immediate because they are guided by a deeper compass, the purpose that animates their actions. And in this, they discover a paradox, that when you stop chasing wealth for its own sake, it begins to flow to you with greater ease. You see, money follows value, and value follows clarity. The rich mind is clear, it is intentional. It knows that energy must be directed if it is to be productive. It sets boundaries not out of selfishness, but out of respect for the vision it is building. It is focused not on doing more, but on doing what matters. This clarity creates momentum, and momentum becomes magnetism. What we call luck is often the result of deeply aligned and focused attention. the kind of attention that the rich mindset has cultivated over time. But the rich mindset is not rigid. It is deeply adaptive. It does not collapse under failure. In fact, it expects failure not as an enemy, but as a teacher. Every setback is simply feedback, an invitation to refine the system. Where others see problems, the rich mind sees puzzles to be solved. It is curious, not cynical. Open, not defensive. This openness makes it resilient, able to bend, adjust, and thrive in an ever-changing world. There is a spiritual dimension to this as well. The rich mindset is not anxious because it operates from a sense of inner sufficiency. It knows that the source of abundance is not out there, but in here, within consciousness itself. And when one is deeply anchored in that truth, money becomes a tool, not a master. It serves a higher purpose, rather than dictating one's worth or identity. The rich mindset is generous, not because it has more, but because it understands the law of circulation. What you give freely from a place of integrity returns multiplied. So we must ask ourselves, what program is running our mind? Are we operating on inherited scripts of fear and limitation? Or are we willing to install a new operating system, one built on abundance, creativity, and faith in our own capacity to shape the world? The former will keep you stuck in loops. The latter will free you to design a life of significance. Ultimately, the rich mindset is not something you are born with. It is something you choose, something you train, something you become. It begins the moment you stop seeing yourself as a pawn on the board and begin acting as the player who sets the rules. It is a quiet revolution that starts within, a reprogramming of your very way of being. And in that shift, everything begins to change. Not because the world has changed, but because you have. You see differently. You act differently, and the world responds in kind. Wealth, as most people perceive it, is something external. A house on the hill, a car in the garage, a number in a bank account. But if you peer beneath the surface of material accumulation, you begin to see something far more profound. Wealth is not a thing, it is a pattern. It is a visible echo of something invisible. It reflects, quite intimately, the state of inner order a person carries within themselves. Just as the external world mirrors the movements of thought and perception, so too does one's financial reality mirror the structure and discipline of the inner life. We live in a universe governed by patterns, not accidents. The very movements of the stars, the seasons of the earth, the beat of your heart, all follow deep, orderly rhythms. There is symmetry in nature, harmony in creation. The same is true in the human being. When your inner world is in disarray, when your thoughts are scattered, your emotions reactive, and your habits chaotic, your outer world will reflect this confusion. But when there is coherence within, when you cultivate clarity, focus, discipline, and calm, your reality begins to shape itself accordingly. Wealth begins to form around that inner structure, like clay finding shape around a mold. So, the first truth is this: money does not bring order to a disordered mind. It merely magnifies what is already present. If you are impulsive, more money will only fuel that impulsiveness. If you are fearful, wealth will become another source of anxiety. But if you are thoughtful, disciplined, and emotionally balanced, money becomes a tool, a brush with which you paint a more meaningful life. Alan Watts often spoke of the illusion of separation, how we believe ourselves to be isolated egos navigating a world of things, rather than waves in an ocean of energy and consciousness. When you begin to see yourself not as a separate entity, but as part of the whole, you begin to understand that inner harmony creates outer harmony. The wealthy individual, in the truest sense, is one who has learned to manage their inner ecosystem. They have cultivated stillness amidst the noise, vision amidst distraction, and patience amidst urgency. This inner order expresses itself in many forms: how one manages time, how one speaks, how one treats others, and how one follows through on commitments. These are not just habits of the successful. They are reflections of a mind that values structure, integrity, and presence. Wealth is not attracted to chaos. It is magnetized by clarity and held by consistency. People who live in internal confusion may stumble into fortune, but they cannot keep it, because they have not become the kind of person who can sustain it. The same principle applies in nature. A tree does not grow tall and strong by chance. It requires deep roots, good soil, the right amount of light and time. The tree's grandeur above ground is only possible because of the structure below the surface. So too, the structure of your thoughts, your beliefs, your systems, and your emotional responses. These are your roots. If you want to grow wealthy in the outer world, you must cultivate richness in your inner world. This means tending to your mental garden with care, uprooting old beliefs, planting seeds of new vision, watering them daily with focus and discipline. The problem for many is that they try to rearrange the outer furniture of life while the internal foundation remains cracked. They chase new jobs, new business ideas, or investment opportunities, hoping that one of these will finally bring them peace or prosperity. But these are merely mirrors. You cannot fix the reflection without addressing the source. Until the internal world is aligned, the external world remains unstable. This is not to say that external strategies and tools have no value. Of course they do. But they are only as effective as the person wielding them. A skilled mind with a simple plan will always outperform a chaotic mind with a perfect blueprint. Because execution, not intention, builds results. And execution is born from clarity, presence, and order within. Inner order also brings with it something that cannot be bought: peace. And peace, contrary to popular belief, is not the absence of problems. It is the presence of coherence. When your values, your thoughts, your actions, and your emotions are all in alignment, from this inner peace arises confidence. And from confidence arises decisiveness. You move through life with calm authority, unshaken by temporary turbulence. That state is magnetic to opportunity. Wealth, then, is not something you chase. It is something you align with. It comes as a response to who you are being, not what you are doing. It is the universe's echo to your internal frequency. Raise the order within, and the outer world adjusts itself to match. This understanding also invites you to let go of envy. There is no need to compare your chapter with someone else's. Everyone's outer life is simply a projection of their inner alignment, their own unique work of inner architecture. Focus instead on becoming deeply ordered within yourself. From there, everything else will begin to find its place. So if you find yourself in a season of lack, do not panic. Do not scramble. Pause. Reflect. Ask, where in my inner world have I allowed disorder? Where am I not being honest or consistent or aligned with my values? Begin there. Reorder your thinking, your schedule, your intentions. And slowly, sometimes imperceptibly at first, the external world will begin to catch up. Alan Watts might say that the world is not separate from you. It moves with you, dances with your thoughts, and responds to your internal weather. So let your inner climate be one of clarity and calm. Let your intentions be pure, your actions deliberate, and your spirit steady. Wealth will follow not as a goal, but as a consequence. Not as something to chase, but as something that emerges from the deep order of a well-tended inner life. There is an old illusion that greatness arrives in grand, sweeping strokes. That change must be explosive, revolutionary, disruptive. That to become someone new, to rise above your circumstances, you must perform some mighty act of transformation all at once. But if you observe nature, if you truly sit with it, quietly, without an agenda, you'll see something very different. You'll see that everything magnificent begins invisibly, slowly, subtly. The mountain was not formed in a day. The tree does not burst from the ground in a fit of ambition. It emerges. It grows, one small movement at a time. And so it is with you. The small step, the seemingly insignificant choice, is not something to be dismissed. It is sacred. Because it is through these small steps that your reality begins to change. Not through the thunder of bold declarations, but through the quiet persistence of action repeated. The very act of choosing one better thought, one clearer word, one intentional breath. This is the way the soul reorganizes itself. This is the seed of transformation. We live in a culture that is obsessed with the immediate. It glorifies the overnight success, the instant result, the quick fix. But reality, as it unfolds in its true rhythm, honors the process. When you take a small step, reading one page, saving $1, rising 1 minute earlier, you are not merely performing an act. You are affirming a new identity. You are whispering to the universe, I am ready. And the universe, ever responsive, begins to reorganize itself in your favor. Not because you demanded it, but because you aligned with it. The ego seeks dramatic shifts to prove its worth. But the soul is far more patient. It knows that evolution happens one heartbeat at a time. The caterpillar does not become the butterfly by force. It dissolves into itself. And then, by an intelligent process that defies logic but obeys deeper laws, it reforms. In the same way, when you commit to small, consistent steps, something inside you begins to melt, not away, but into form. Your chaos gives way to rhythm. Your confusion begins to settle into clarity. You see, there is power in the humble repetition of small acts. These acts may go unnoticed by others. They may even seem meaningless to you at times. But what you are really doing is laying brick upon brick in the architecture of your future. No cathedral was ever built in one stroke. It is the placing of one stone, and then another, that raises it from the dust into something divine. In this way, each small step contains a kind of magic. It becomes a ceremony, a sacred expression of who you are choosing to become. The very act of rising from your bed when you said you would is not trivial. It is a promise kept. And the self is built upon promises kept. When you honor the small, you build the trust required to take on the great. Without that trust, all change is temporary. With it, all change is inevitable. Many people wait for motivation before they act, but those who understand the nature of movement realize that motivation comes from action, not before it. You do not wait to feel ready. You act, and in the action, you summon the energy. Even the smallest motion, taking a breath and standing upright, changes your state. And when your state changes, your decisions change. And when your decisions change, your life follows. Alan Watts often spoke of the illusion of control, how our desire to manipulate the future can actually remove us from the present. But the small step is not about control. It is about participation. It is about showing up for life as it is, with what you have, where you are. You need not see the entire path. You only need to trust the next step. And when you take it, the next will reveal itself. This is the way of the Tao, the unfolding path that reveals itself only to those who are walking. It is important, too, to remember that small steps create massive shifts because they change who you are being. Every action you take is a vote for the kind of person you want to become. If you choose to act with courage, even in a small way, you are becoming courageous. If you act with discipline, even for 5 minutes, you are becoming disciplined. Identity is not forged in fantasy. It is forged in the fire of action. Eventually, the shifts compound. The steps become strides. The new way of being becomes automatic. But it all begins with the decision to take the first small step, not once, but repeatedly. Even when it's inconvenient. Even when it's boring. Even when no one else sees. Because this is how deep transformation happens. Not with noise, but with quiet devotion. So if you feel overwhelmed by the mountain before you, do not despair. Do not try to leap to the summit in a single bound. Instead, ask yourself, what is one small thing I can do today that honors the life I'm building? Then do it. Do it with presence. Do it with care. Do it with the understanding that the act is not separate from the goal. The act is the goal. For it is in the doing that the becoming takes place. You are always one small step away from a different reality. One decision, one intention, one gentle act of self-alignment. And in time, that step becomes a path, the path becomes a road, and the road becomes a life transformed. It is a peculiar tendency of the human mind to wait. We wait for the right moment, the right mood, the right alignment of stars and circumstance before we allow ourselves to act. And in this waiting, so much is lost, not only time, but potential vitality, the raw momentum of becoming. The notion of readiness becomes a clever disguise for fear, cloaked in the language of logic. We say we are preparing, but so often we are postponing. And what we are postponing is not just action, but life itself. To act before you feel ready is to disrupt that illusion. It is to step out of the safe container of thought and into the living current of experience. You see, readiness is rarely a feeling. It is a decision. The mind wants to feel safe, to feel certain. But life is not about certainty. It is about flow, about movement, about stepping into the unknown with a kind of sacred curiosity. If you wait until you are no longer afraid, you will never begin. But if you begin despite the fear, something miraculous happens, your sense of self begins to expand. And the fear, like a fog before the morning sun, begins to lift. Alan Watts often reminded us that we are not separate from the world, that the boundary between self and life is a mental construct. You do not stand apart from reality, you are woven into it, like a wave in the sea. To wait for permission to move, then, is to misunderstand your very nature. You are not here to be given a role. You are here to write your part in the script as you go. And the act of writing it, with all its uncertainties and imperfections, is the very thing that brings it to life. The truth is, no one ever really feels ready. Not for the first step, the first creation, the first risk. Great artists, great thinkers, great builders, they all began in some fog of doubt, but they acted anyway, not because they knew they would succeed, but because something within them refused to remain silent. Readiness, in this deeper sense, is not a condition to be achieved. It is a flame to be kindled. A quiet courage that emerges not in advance of action, but through it. This is not recklessness. It is responsiveness. It is recognizing that there is a window, brief and sacred, when inspiration meets opportunity. And in that moment, hesitation can be the greatest thief. The mind will always present reasons to wait. You're not qualified enough. You don't have the resources. What if you fail? But the soul speaks in another voice. It says, begin. Trust the process. Let the act itself refine you. We often think we must have all the answers before we begin. But the truth is, answers are found through movement. Action is the great revealer. You take a step, and suddenly new information appears. You try something, and you learn something. The path ahead does not unfold before those who stand still. It reveals itself to those who walk it. This is the great paradox. The clarity we long for is not found in stillness, but in motion. Think of how a sculptor begins, not with a perfect vision, but with a block of stone and a sense of what might be hidden within. The chisel moves, sometimes with certainty, sometimes with guesswork. Bit by bit, the form begins to emerge. So it is with your life. You are sculpting it with each act. You do not need to know exactly how it will look. You only need to trust that something worthwhile lies within the stone, waiting to be revealed. Fear, of course, will try to convince you otherwise. It will speak in the language of protection. Be careful. Wait, make sure. But fear is not always a warning. Often it is a compass. It points to what matters. What scares you most is often what will grow you most. And so the presence of fear is not a stop sign, but a signal. Not go back, but go deeper. When you act in the presence of fear, you rewire your relationship with yourself. You learn that you are capable not because you feel powerful, but because you dare to move when you don't. There is tremendous power in that first move. It need not be dramatic. It need not be visible to anyone else. But the shift it creates in your psyche is profound. It tells your subconscious, I am not waiting anymore. I am no longer the person who delays my own becoming. And once you make that move, the second becomes easier. Then the third, momentum builds. Identity shifts. And what once felt impossible begins to feel inevitable. We tend to underestimate what small acts of courage can unlock. One email sent. One conversation initiated. One creation shared. These may seem minor, but they set forces in motion. And those forces ripple outward, intersecting with people, opportunities, events you could never have predicted. This is how life responds, not to who you wish to be, but to who you are willing to become through your actions. So do not wait to feel ready. You are not a machine in need of perfect calibration. You are a living, breathing, becoming thing. Trust that the act itself will shape you. That wisdom will come as you walk. That readiness is not a precondition for action. It is its reward. In acting before you feel ready, you join the eternal dance of creation, which never waits for certainty, but flows through risk, improvisation, and grace. As Watts would say, the meaning of life is just to be alive. And in the being in the moving, in the trying, you find what you were looking for all along. Most people live their lives believing that identity follows achievement, that you must first succeed before you believe you are successful, that you must first receive love before you feel worthy of it, that wealth, strength, or wisdom must arrive before you can wear the name of one who possesses it. But this is to mistake the reflection for the light, the echo for the source. In truth, all outer results flow from a sense of who you believe you are. Identity does not follow outcomes. Outcomes follow identity. And to truly change your life, you must begin by changing your sense of self. To adopt the identity before the outcome is not to lie to yourself, nor is it to wear a mask. It is to recognize that you are not a fixed being, but a becoming. You are fluid, like a river, not a statue carved from stone, and in every moment you are free to direct the current. When you say, "I am not that yet," what you are really doing is delaying your arrival. But when you say, "I am now becoming this," you bring the future into the present, and you begin to behave as one who is already aligned with that future. Consider the artist who says, "I will call myself an artist once I sell my work." And so they hesitate to paint with freedom, they doubt their brushstrokes, they hold back their essence. But the one who says, "I am an artist now," paints with a different energy, not because the world has crowned them, but because they have given themselves permission. That internal permission unlocks everything. The strokes become bolder. The fear fades. The creation deepens. The world eventually reflects what they already believed to be true. Alan Watts often spoke of the illusion of separateness, how the self we think we are is only a role, a character in the great play of life. But what if you could choose your role more consciously? What if, rather than being a passive recipient of identity shaped by others, you could step into a character of your own creation? This is not fantasy. It is the natural power of human imagination. And imagination, properly harnessed, is not mere dreaming. It is a blueprint, a map, a rehearsal for what is to come. You see, the brain is not nearly as concerned with truth as it is with coherence. It seeks to make the outer world match the inner narrative. So when you begin to identify as the kind of person who succeeds, who follows through, who leads, who creates, who thrives, you begin to take actions consistent with that story. And those actions repeated shape reality. The great trap is waiting to feel like that person. You may not feel like a leader, a writer, an entrepreneur, or a powerful soul. But you can act like one. You can ask, "What would that version of me do right now?" And then simply do it. This is not pretending. This is practicing. You are rehearsing your future self into existence. You are aligning your energy, your habits, and your attention with the reality you wish to live in. This identity shift happens not all at once, but through repetition. Each time you choose differently. When you eat like a healthy person, think like a calm person, plan like a successful person, you cast a vote for your new self. Eventually, the votes add up. A tipping point is reached, and what once felt foreign becomes familiar. You stop acting like that person and begin to be that person, not because the world changed, but because you changed from within. There is also an elegance in this approach, because it frees you from outcome attachment. You are no longer chasing a result to prove who you are. You are simply expressing who you have already chosen to be. The process becomes the reward. You show up not because you need to get somewhere, but because showing up is what this version of you does. This creates consistency. It removes the emotional volatility that so often derails growth. When you begin to embody a new identity, it is natural that your outer world may lag behind. People may not see you differently right away. Results may take time to appear. But this is the reflection catching up to the source. Trust the sequence. Be the signal before the response. Carry the frequency of the life you wish to live. Eventually, the world will attune to that frequency and respond accordingly. Even when no one is watching, act like the person you are becoming, especially then, because it is in those private, quiet, unseen moments that your identity is most powerfully shaped. There, without applause or validation, you solidify your inner reality. And inner reality, over time, always becomes outer truth. This is not a call to arrogance or delusion. It is a call to alignment, a call to stop seeking evidence of who you are and instead to become the evidence, to shift from performing to embodying, to understand that belief is not just mental, it is behavioral. You know what you believe by how you behave. And if you behave as one who is already what you desire to be, you will become it, not by force, but by resonance. Watts might say that all of life is a dance, and you must dance first, even before the music starts. The movement itself invites the rhythm. The step calls forth the beat. In the same way, when you adopt the identity, the outcomes follow, as naturally as the tide follows the moon. So, choose today. Who do you wish to be? Not later, not someday, now. Speak, walk, think, breathe like that person. Let the echo of your actions build the world around you. And remember, you are not becoming something foreign. You are simply returning to the truth that was waiting for you all along. Most people misunderstand wealth. They see it as numbers on a screen, coins in a vault, properties and possessions stacked high. But these are merely the byproducts, the reflections, the echo of something deeper. True wealth, lasting, meaningful wealth, begins not in the external world, but in the internal state of mind. It is a mindset, a way of perceiving, a way of being. You can hand two people the same amount of money, and one will multiply it while the other squanders it. Why? Because of how they see the world. Because of how they see themselves. Wealth is not a number. It is a relationship with abundance, with value, with time, and with self. When you believe you are lacking, when you live from the thought, there's never enough, you enter a mental loop of survival. In that loop, everything becomes a scramble. You clutch, you hoard, you operate from fear, and fear narrows your vision. You cannot see opportunity when you're fixated on scarcity. But when you shift, when you begin to feel, even subtly, that you are already connected to abundance, your decisions change. And those decisions, repeated over time, begin to change your reality. Alan Watts often said that life is not a problem to be solved, but an experience to be lived. So too with wealth. The moment you chase it like a problem to be fixed, how can I get more? When will I finally be rich? You miss the point. You separate yourself from the experience of wealth, and by doing so, you push it further away. But when you approach it like a current you can step into, a rhythm you can dance with, you begin to flow with it. You don't grab for it. You cultivate it. The mindset of wealth is grounded in enoughness, not complacency, but presence. It is the recognition that you are not empty and seeking to be filled, but whole and ready to expand. From this space, wealth becomes an expression of value rather than a compensation for lack. You stop asking, how can I get? And start asking, what can I create? What can I offer? The wealthy mind is generous not because it has much, but because it understands the source of its wealth is internal and renewable. When you begin to think like the wealthy, truly wealthy, not just rich, you start noticing the subtle energies behind decisions. You become aware of the difference between spending and investing, between consuming and creating, between immediate pleasure and lasting fulfillment. The poor mind seeks relief. The wealthy mind seeks alignment, not in the sense of superiority or status, but in the sense of energetic integrity, where your choices reflect who you truly are becoming. You can start embodying this mindset no matter your circumstances. The numbers in your account may be small, but your thoughts can be expansive. You can carry yourself with dignity. You can treat your time as valuable. You can cultivate gratitude for what you have and simultaneously be open to more. This is not contradiction. It is the paradox of growth. You appreciate the seed while trusting the tree is coming. A wealthy mindset also knows how to wait, not in passive boredom, but in patient preparation. It knows that sometimes the most powerful action is restraint, the willingness to build slowly, to learn deeply, to lay foundations that last. The poor mindset rushes, demands, grasps. The wealthy mindset listens, observes, strategizes. It plays the long game because it is not driven by desperation. It knows that time is an ally, not an enemy. One of the most powerful shifts you can make is to stop asking, what can I afford? And start asking, what is this worth? not just in terms of money, but energy, time, attention. Begin to value your life force. Spend it consciously. Invest it wisely. When you do this, you begin to attract experiences, people, and opportunities that resonate with this higher valuation of self. The world mirrors your internal price tag. Set it with care. And do not mistake simplicity for lack. Many of the wealthiest people live very simple lives because they are no longer trying to impress or prove. They have moved beyond that stage of needing the world to reflect back an image of success. True wealth is quiet. It does not shout. It walks slowly. It enjoys. It chooses. It rests in the knowledge that it is supported by something deeper than digits and titles. To think like the wealthy is to understand that money is a tool, not a trophy. It is not something you chase. It is something you direct. And you can only direct it well when your inner compass is steady. If you give a disorganized person more resources, they create more disorganization. But give a clear, calm, focused person even a little, and they will create much. This is the law of resonance. You attract and multiply that which matches your inner frequency. So how do you begin? You begin now, by noticing your thoughts about money, by observing how you speak about abundance, by paying attention to how you treat the small resources you already have. If you are careless with a little, why would life trust you with more? Wealth begins with stewardship, the understanding that what you have now is not a test but a reflection. Change the way you relate to it, and you change what grows from it. Ultimately, wealth is not something you earn. It is something you allow. And you allow it by becoming the kind of person who thinks, feels, and acts in alignment with abundance. Not someday, not when conditions are perfect, but now, in your thoughts, in your habits, in the way you breathe, walk, and show up for the world. As Watts would say, you don't arrive at abundance. You realize you were already swimming in it. You only had to open your eyes.